Everybody loves a love triangle, right? Just as long as you're not the one on the outs. Well, today's song is about a rising rock frontman and his two loves. One, a long-distance girlfriend, and the other, well, it's not what you think. Funny thing is, the song is written from the girlfriend's perspective, and she knows something's up. And although this song may read like confessions of a rock star, its hooks are way too catchy to bring you down. This is one kick it into overdrive guilt trip, if you will. You're going to definitely want to take on one of the best rock songs of its time coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you want to take a deep dive into the songs that have become the soundtrack of your life, you're going to dig this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below and click the bell right now so that you never miss out on our latest videos, on our interviews. Also, check us out on Patreon. We actually have a really cool program going up there next week. Got my Cream t-shirt on that they sent me. I want to thank them. The Cream archives are opening soon, so check that out. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the story of Scott Weiland and Stone Temple Pilots and their 1994 hit, Interstate Love Song, one of my favorite songs from the 90s. From the outset, it seemed like the critics had it in for Scott Weiland and Stone Temple Pilots. Launched into rock stardom with their debut album, Core, this 90s alt-rock band garnered massive media attention right off the bat. Most of it was pretty heartless. Labeled pretenders, rip-off artists, and grunge opportunists. Really, their biggest crime was showing up at the party a little bit late. Core was released on September 29, 1992. That was a full year after Nirvana's Nevermind kicked the doors open for the media's grunge-feeding frenzy. Pearl Jam's 10 hit a month earlier on August 27, 1991 from Nirvana, and Soundgarden's Bad Motorfinger arrived in stores on October 8th. And Alice in Chains' Dirt, that actually came out the same day as STP's Core, but with 1990's Facelift already locked in and the benefit of being Seattle-born, they were just as legit as the rest of them. At the peak of STP's early success, Weiland often sang with a deep baritone vocal style that got him repeatedly roasted for sounding a little too much like Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder. Critics were wrong. They're just dead wrong about STP. But despite the critical contempt, Core was an incredible album. It was raw and heavy-hitting, powered by the single Sex Type Thing, Plush, and Creep, along with a radio promo release, Wicked Garden. Core's success only poured more gasoline on the media's burning disdain. Plush, in particular, was a mega hit and one the band didn't want to be defined by. So in anticipation of its success, yeah, they knew it was going to kill. They refused to make it their first single, and they buried it deep in the record. It was track 9. Even so, this song that started out as a simple guitar exercise with a country riff and some ragtime chords rocketed up the rock charts to number 1. Plush inundated the airwaves. It was everywhere. But despite being a people's favorite, the media bashing continued. In fact, in a January 1994 Rolling Stone poll, Stone Temple Pilots was voted both the best new band by readers and the worst new band by critics. But as we all know, the record-buying public always wins, and Core climbed to 4 million albums sold in the spring of 94. And STP was at work on their second album, Purple. It was a designed departure from Core and a conscious effort to distinguish themselves from the godfathers of grunge. Forging ahead with their hard rock and MO, STP enriched their sound by mixing in a number of other genres. There's blues, jazz, psychedelic, funk, southern rock, and some stripped-down acoustic moments. Their sound had definitely matured since then. Weiland called Purple more experimental and said that rather than the success of Core being a limiting factor for the band, it actually gave them more freedom to explore new soundscapes. Now, under the direction of famed producer Brendan O'Brien, Stone Temple Pilots recorded and mixed Purple in a speedy 3 weeks. I guess since they'd spent a year and a half touring Core, they took advantage of their sound checks to write new material for the album. That ultimately gave them something like 40 new songs to choose from when they went into the studio to record. Now, the guys from STP trusted Brendan completely. How could you not? Incredible producer. The process felt very natural to them. People sometimes talk about the curse of the sophomore slump, said bassist Robert DeLeo, but we didn't pay any heed to that. We knew that the songs we had were pretty special. Weiland called Core a bit of a production compromise, and he personally liked Purple better. The process was more familiar by that time, and Purple was more honest and more autobiographical. Purple included the singles, there was Big Empty, there was Vaseline, and a massive hit that would propel them into megastardom, one of my favorite songs of the 90s, Interstate Love Song. Interstate Love Song blends two of Purple's most common themes into one track: drug addiction and Weiland's main girl and future wife, Janina Castaneda. I'm going to lead in with both of these topics since they're so essential to the song, or the core of the song, Core. As we get into the main story, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses that you see me wear on this show every single day. At Zenni, you can take advantage of really cool styles for any budget, whether under $30 to as low as $6.95. You just go to Zenni.com and you choose your style, your color, your frame, and they deliver them right to your door. Just put in your prescription. It's really cool. So apparently the first time Scott Weiland got seriously high, as he put it, this was when STP was out on tour promoting Core. Though he had shied away from the hard stuff up until then, Scott associated heroin with romance, glamour, danger, and the rock and roll lifestyle. And now that Stone Temple Pilots were becoming a driving force on the alt-rock scene, he felt that he needed to live up to the stereotype. He was also curious about heroin's creative possibilities, and he believed that it would enhance his onstage performance. So while in New York, on the same night STP dressed up as Kiss, Weiland in a black wig and face makeup, he took his first hit. Scott Weiland would say that the opiate took his performance to where he'd always dreamed of going. At this point, he was unafraid. No demons, no doubts. The thing about heroin, at least for me, was that I used to be afraid or ultra self-conscious when I walked into a bar or club. That's what Scott Weiland said. But on dope, I could be Superman or any man. I didn't care what anyone thought of me. Dope was my savior, the ultimate equalizer, or so I thought. After the show, Scott Weiland didn't want to see a single soul. All he wanted to do was be alone with this feeling. But as euphoric as Scott may have felt that night, sadly, substance abuse became a star-crossed subplot that would haunt his entire career, eventually following him down to the grave. But drugs wouldn't be the only thing vying for Scott Weiland's affections. It's time to turn to another prominent theme on this record, Scott's rocky romance with his girlfriend, enter Janina Castaneda. By the way, The Still Remains is about her, STP's version of a love song, if you will. It's about being so captivated by someone that you want to be with them no matter what. And that was the kind of headspace that Weiland was in, with Janina for a long time, very long time. He was really smitten by her. However, their relationship would only get more complicated as time would go on. Scott was 22 when he met Janina. She was only 19. Their courtship started out before STP really took off. According to Scott Weiland, they met in LA at the King Club. And although he initially had his eyes on her friend, it was her number that he came away with at the end of the night. Scott called Janina a beautiful woman beautiful soul, beautiful spirit in my life when my life couldn't appreciate her kind of beauty. At first, they were drug partners, actually. But when Janina quit and Weiland didn't, tensions escalated and their relationship became very strained. It's kind of a hot and cold affair, a theme that ties into today's song. So let's get into it. Initially written while Stone Temple Pilots were on the road touring Core, Interstate Love Song conjures up images of cruising the highway with the windows rolled down all the way. The feel of the song just plays like a carefree escape. Kind of just makes you want to get out there, kick up some gravel, and just drive. It's one of the greatest songs for that I can think of. You turn it on, you're instantly captivated. Scott Weiland told the story of the song's musical origins on VH1's Storytellers. He explained that for 14 months, the band zigzagged across the U.S., from show to show in an RV. And that there was this rider truck that carried all their gear as well. So when someone needed some space away from the other guys, they'd hang out in the back of the rider with a walkie-talkie. Now, one time when Robert, the bassist, was back there with his acoustic guitar, he came up with the music for Interstate Love Song. It began as a bossa nova tune, is what he would say. But I didn't think that people would like that so much, so I added a country riff and a melody I had floating around in my head. He then called his band brothers up on the walkie-talkie and he played it for them. And as soon as Scott Weiland heard it, he began humming along and turning that melody from the intro into the chorus. Although the process only took around 10 minutes, Robert DeLeo knew that they had something special. This was a different level of writing for me, is what he would say. While the music keeps you rocking, the lyrics that add an entirely new dimension to the song. In fact, the title has somewhat of a double meaning. Not only does it convey the feeling of being out on the open road, on the interstate, but it also references Scott and Janina's relationship, which at that moment spanned across 2 separate states. It was literally an interstate love because Weiland was in Georgia and his fiancee was back in California. So Interstate Love Song, according to Weiland, is about a couple of different themes. It's about honesty, or the lack of it, with Janina, and it's about his new relationship, cheating on his fiancée, a temptress known as heroin. Now, when STP was recording Purple in Atlanta and Scott was writing the lyrics to this song, he and Janina had promised each other that they'd kick their heroin habit for good. They both had wanted to get clean. But in hindsight, it seemed maybe Janina wanted it more because Scott was not keeping up his end of the bargain at that point. While there, Weiland found a 25-year-old drug dealer who, as he put it, was down in Funky Town. Scott was living to score, and for a while, this girl was the key to his so-called heroin health. In fact, recording wasn't even an option until he got his fix at this point. So each night, Weiland would bury his shame. He'd call up Janina and promise that he was clean. But said Scott, chances are I had just fixed before I called her. I imagine what was going through her mind when I wrote, waiting on a Sunday afternoon for what I read between the lines. Your lies. A hand in rusted shame. So do you laugh or does it cry? Reply. And yet he sincerely missed her. He sincerely felt for her. Somehow guilt was his best friend, his worst enemy, his motivator, and his tormentor all in one. According to Robert DeLeo, the meaning of the song wasn't completely obvious, but if you know where the song is coming from, it's a very poetic piece. And that's a gift that Scott always had. He was a poet and he imbued his songs with incredible insights. But he made the lyrics just vague enough that listeners could come up with their own interpretations. So do you laugh or does it cry? And so channeling this guilt that he felt, Weiland wrote a really clever and deceptively deep look into his relationship with Janina. Like I said before, this song is about a love triangle, a very sad one, between Scott, Janina, and heroin. He loves them both and basically goes to whatever lengths necessary to keep them both in his life. But what makes this even more intriguing is that he wrote the lyrics from Janina's perspective. And she's onto him. She knows that he's in essence cheating on her with heroin. So she calls him on it. Waiting on a Sunday afternoon for what I read between the lines. Your lies. Whether it was just Scott's paranoia or whether Janina actually knew, I don't know. But the way that he puts down these lyrics, it sure seems like she knows. And though I haven't entirely figured out what the next line means, I love the imagery. Feeling like a hand in rusted shame. So do you laugh or does it cry? And then to get him to fess up, she says, reply. Ouch. That one word, you really feel it. This girl means business. I think the chorus is telling this as well. Leaving on a southern train only yesterday you lied. Promises of what I seem to be, only watch the time go by. All these things you've said to me. And then there's this heavy hammer stroke of a guilt trip. Breathing is the hardest thing to do, and with all I've said and all that's dead for you. Getting inside Scott's head, trying to get into Janina's head. It's just crazy painful. I really wonder what she thought when she heard the song. It's a brutal song and even more intense when you remember that Scott Weiland wrote it from Janina's perspective. So he totally understands this craziness. And he's still under the spell of this vice, even though he knows what's going to happen. It just paints the picture of how harrowing addiction is. The music video for Interstate Love Song was really memorable as well. Intentionally touched with washed out purple hues, its plot to play upon the Liar theme. The video begins with an early 1900s silent film style clip showing a guy in a top hat getting dumped by his girl. Begging for forgiveness, his nose begins to grow a la Pinocchio, and from there he's on the run from some unseen pursuer. The truth, perhaps, maybe it's heroin, his addiction. Bursting through a door onto a rooftop, he passes by STP, just chilling. We then watch clips interspersed throughout the video. The guy trying to get away with the band just playing the soundtrack. It's a fun, artsy ride that underlines the lyrical message of this song. Interstate Love Song was one of STP's biggest songs of all time. It was all over radio at that time, alternative radio, 94, 95. It got airplay on the top 40 stations as well. Interstate Love Song went to number 22 on the U.S. mainstream top 40, but it hit number 2 on the alternative airplay and, like I said, number 1 on the mainstream rock charts. Internationally, it went to number 53 on the UK singles chart and number 9 on the UK rock and metal chart. In Canada, it went to number 20, and in Iceland, yes, Iceland, Interstate climbed to number 2. Interstate Love Song also made a comeback in 2015 on Billboard's U.S. Hot Rock and Alternative Songs chart, coming in at number 9, 21 years after its initial run. Interstate Love Song has a couple of pop culture appearances. It was in The Rocker in 2008 and Battleship in 2012. It's also been covered by Hootie and the Blowfish in 98, Velvet Revolver, of course, with Scott Weiland in 2004. Reliant K did it in 2011, Better Than Ezra in 2016. As well as Joss Stone and Hellstorm. Back in LA, In April 1994, after Weiland and crew had finished recording Purple, Scott's habit had grown into a black hole of a monster. And I think Janina had probably figured that out, what was going on. So the couple actually moved into a house in remote Topanga Canyon to get Scott away from that temptation. Eventually, he got into rehab, and he even tied the knot with Janina the following September. But Weiland was ever on a rocky road. The following year, he was busted for possession of cocaine and heroin, and he was sentenced to 1 year of probation. It wouldn't be the last time that he was arrested on drug charges, sadly. In and out of rehab and sobriety, his ruinous relationship with substance abuse haunted him for years. In 2000, he split with Janina after 5+ years of marriage. Sadly, marred by lies, infidelity, and heroin. 1999's hit Sour Girl tells that story in part. She was a happy girl the day that she left me.
She was a happy girl when she left me.
The new millennium brought 2 more marriages, 2 kids, a split from STP, and then a reunion, and then another split. There were also other musical projects like the aforementioned Velvet Revolver, Art of Anarchy, and Scott Weiland and the Wildabouts. Sadly, on December 3rd, 2015, Scott Weiland was found dead in the bunk of his tour bus. The cause of death? Accidental overdose. An array of illegal drugs and prescription medication were found in his system, and Weiland was just 48 years old. Look, any drug addiction story is a complicated narrative, to say the least. On the one hand, it's dangerous and it's irresponsible to glorify rock star substance abuse, but on the other, outright condemnation is not the answer. It's really important to show empathy for everyone who is in pain, including those who struggle with drug dependency. Scott was at times his own worst enemy, sabotaging himself with really poor choices. And in other moments, he was just too sick to assert control over his habits. I think Interstate Love Song can maybe help us remember that and remind us that there are people out there that need help. Scott Weiland left an incredible musical legacy that deserves serious reflection. Leave us a comment about Stone Temple Pilots and Interstate Love Song and Scott Weiland. What do you remember about this song? What are your memories? Let's get a good discussion going. Scott Weiland, such an underrated frontman, great singer, great lyricist, a real loss there. What else should we cover from the 90s? Weezer, Foo Fighters, Smashing Pumpkins, let us know. And if you dig our content, make sure to subscribe below so you never miss out on one of our videos. We would love to have you as part of our community. Check us out on Patreon as well to help us keep it a daily channel. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.